Thanks so much. I'm John Lynn, the founder and chief editor at HealthcareITToday. Excited to be moderating this fireside chat for you all. And we have a really special guest that has a lot of knowledge and experience in the industry. I'll go ahead and let him introduce himself. Tim Coleman from Lilly. Go ahead.
All right. Well, good afternoon. Thank you, John, for being with me here. Tim Coleman. I am the Chief Technology Officer for Eli Lilly and Company. In my role, I manage the tech strategy for the firm, the digital capabilities that are important and the backbone for transformation, and also our Tech Capability Center, which is based in India. For those who are not aware, Lilly is a medicines company. We unite caring with discovery to create medicines that make life better for people all around the world. And our medicines are answers for some of the world's most pressing diseases. You think about diabetes and immunology disorders, oncology, as well as neuroscience.
Excellent. So, I think the number one question everyone here probably wants to know is, where are you using AI and machine learning across your enterprise?
Yeah. Well, John, we're using breakthrough technologies, including AI, across the entire value chain to accelerate drug discovery, to speed our clinical trials, to improve patient experience from a commercial perspective. We're also using it to optimize our business processes, especially those that are important to speeding our medicines to patients. Information and technology is increasingly critical in the health and life sciences industry and extremely critical at Lilly. And so from that perspective, our aspiration is to redefine what's possible in pharma through technology. And that's how we're going to compete and win in the industry.
Interesting. I think that is the challenge for all of us here, is how does the technology and these AI solutions redefine what we're doing? There's an eternal question, and obviously the title of this session, so I think we have to address it as well. Do you see as most of what you're doing as augmenting your people, or do you see it as automating everything?
Yeah. Well, I think from my perspective, there's never been a better time to be at the intersection of science, of medicine, and information technology. We're just seeing an explosion of possibilities happen in each of those disciplines individually, and it's coming together as a perfect storm of opportunity. And I'm excited because technology is at the heart of it. To your question, I think we're seeing a shift that's occurring in the role of technology, from a primary focus on automation, which has been about driving business efficiency and reducing our costs. And we're seeing a shift towards augmentation, which is about driving business growth. And the playing field in industry is now about business growth. And so augmentation is a key part of our tech strategy moving forward.
I think that's interesting because I've heard a lot of people argue the opposite, that they start with augmentation and want to grow to automation. So that's interesting that you said you kind of started with automation.
That's correct.
And then now you're doing more augmentation. Is that because of people's willingness to accept these technologies and what you started with, where maybe it wasn't impacting people? Or why do you think that's different than many of the people I hear talking about it?
Yeah, so John, I think we've learned over time. And we started, as many companies did, a few years ago, focused on automation. I think automation is really comfortable. It's the traditional role that tech has played for most organizations. And so that's where we started. With the shift towards business growth, that's where augmentation now plays a different role.
Interesting. When we were preparing for this, you made an interesting comment about the evolution of technology at Lilly. And when I think about Lilly, I think of a bunch of chemists, pharmacists, right? Researching and doing those things. So help people understand how technology has, and the role of technology has evolved at Lilly.
Yep. So I kind of referred to that a bit earlier in terms of the excitement that's happening in our industry. Again, we're using tech, particularly AI, machine learning, in every aspect of our value chain. Examples of augmentation would include, one, using machine learning and AI to drive drug discovery. And it's not just about speed, but it's also about increasing the throughput of molecules from tens and thousands that we may discover in a given year now to millions and billions of molecules that we're able to screen to find new medicines moving forward. We're also excited about the use of medical grade devices in our clinical trials that help us collect data from our patients real time and continuously. The exciting part is we are gaining new insights about disease, about human behavior that will help us understand better how to think about the efficacy and safety of our products. We're using omnichannel and personalization in sales and marketing in our business units. And the goal there is to improve patient experience, of course, but also to improve patient adherence so that our patients can benefit fully from the therapeutic benefit. So those are a few examples.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to think about, you said thousands to, millions of molecules. Like, you look at that and you say, without technology, this is impossible. And I think that's true for so many other aspects of healthcare. How do we engage patients at scale? Whether it's a clinical trial, whether it's a provider organization, the only answer is technology and AI and these solutions. So I think that's the exciting thing for me when I look at it, is saying technology is the only option. So many of the things we do in healthcare that are interesting now because the technology is available.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. Could you share some specific examples? I think people learn best from actual examples of what you're doing and what you're doing with AI and machine learning, et cetera, and how it's helping to kind of reduce the impact on workers. Burnout's a universal problem, it seems, these days. How are you using these technologies? There's some specific examples to help reduce the repetitive tasks that your workers have to do?
So we're leveraging automation and also AI to reduce, ultimately to eliminate a lot of the repetitive tasks that our workers have to do. And our goal is to shift and create significant capacity that allows them to be more productive, and that's a key way in which we're leveraging our technology. I'd say one of the best examples of augmentation, and what we're discussing here, is in the space of clinical trial design. In the past, it would take several weeks, sometimes months, to do scenario planning around clinical trial design. It was very tedious, sometimes repetitive in terms of our trial designers having to find all the information and create a mesh of spreadsheets to help manage that process. Well, we've completely transformed clinical trial design at Lilly through data and analytics. We now do those simulations in minutes. We're enabling our decision makers to make decisions about our trial designs in real time. And we're really excited about the results. Not only are we saving significant or generating significant savings from our efforts, but we're also accelerating patient enrollment. And so for those in the room who are in pharma, who are a part of clinical trials, you know that patient enrollment is the long pole in the tent of clinical trial execution. And if we can accelerate patient enrollment, we can improve the pace of our trials and ultimately speed our medicines to patients. So that's a great example of automation, more so augmentation, making an impact.
Yeah, and I think we've seen a shift of evolution, and I'd be interested to know if you've seen the same in your organization. I come from more of the provider background, and for a long time, the providers and the staff at provider organizations, they would look at AI and this and saying, "Oh, are you trying to take my job?" And then what we've had is that there's been a lack of workers in healthcare, especially lower paid, revenue cycle, et cetera, workers, that now they're saying, "Please take my job because I'm doing 3 people's job." And so, I don't know, have you seen that evolution in kind of acceptance of these technologies by your employees and staff as well?
Yeah, I think it's a common problem that we face across industry. And I think the beauty of technology today in the context of growth, as the demands of the workforce increase, we can begin to use technology creatively to help lessen that burden on employees and also achieve our productivity objectives.
Yeah. I mean, I just love that people actually are embracing it. Right? You know, we're not fighting it as much, I think, anymore. But there still is some understanding that I think has to happen. You know, how about generative AI and NLP? It's all the buzz, of course. Is there a session here where that hasn't mentioned generative AI? I don't know. Probably not. Talk to us about how you're using that to create these patient narratives, you know, for your clinical trials.
So generative AI clearly has disruptive potential. You know, that's why I'm here. That's why I think we're all here at this conference. I just hope as a tech leader that the reality of AI meets or exceeds the hype that's going on across the industry right now. But I think, you know, one of the things that I'm most excited about generative AI is e-authoring. We actually started playing around with experimenting with natural language generation a few years ago. And it started as a passion project and has progressed from kind of experimentation and POCs to pilots and now production for a use case called patient narratives. We're leveraging natural language generation at scale. What used to take a scientific writer over 4 hours to create one patient narrative now takes less than a minute to create the first draft. And so if you just think for a moment, the number of patients that we enroll in clinical trials and the number of patient experiences that we need to document from our clinical trials as a part of our regulatory submissions, that gives you a sense for the magnitude of impact that we can have in this particular space. But we're not done yet. We actually believe the combination of NLG plus translation will have exponential benefits. So not only will we generate documents faster, that will help us to speed submissions, but we'll also leverage translation to translate in real time and enable us to submit our regulatory applications, our regulatory packages simultaneously around the world. And that's a process that takes, in some cases, several years.
So are you talking about translating languages or translating for regulatory?
Translating languages for scientific and clinical documents that would be reviewed and approved by regulators.
That's amazing. I actually saw that at a recent conference where they scanned in a document and they spit out the document in another language. Same principle,
Yes, same
applied to you know, the clinical documentation for clinical trials. That's fascinating. You said something interesting, though, and it reminded me of a conversation I had this morning with someone that compared adoption of these generative AI technologies with the adoption of voice recognition. And that is, and you talked about the hype. And they compared it and said, well, when we did voice recognition, the hype was ahead of the technology as far as what was available. Like, it wasn't quite there. It finally did get there. But it took 10 years to get there. You know, talk about that hype. How do we manage that hype so that we don't overstate, you know, what is possible? Like, how accurate is that scientific document that you talked about that took, you know, 10 minutes rather than 4 hours? You know, and how do we manage that hype?
Yeah. Well, in the case of patient narratives, we took a very agile approach. And I think that's how we deal with uncertainty. That's how we deal with maturing technology, and that's how we're going to kind of find our way through this hype that starts with using agile capabilities. It starts with doing proof of concept to understand what's the uncertainty and how do we mitigate that uncertainty. And then as we gain answers, then we can progress to production. So that's how we've approached it, and I think that's the way forward for all of us in this space.
Interesting. Well, you know, I think whenever we talk about implementing these technologies, you know, and I was actually having a conversation just at lunch with a lady, and she's like, these people come up to her and say, we just want to implement some AI. And she's like, well, what do you want to accomplish? And she's like, wait, we just want to implement it. And she's like, wait, no, what's the business objective? What result do you want to have? So how do you look at measuring the impact of AI or other technologies at Lilly?
Yeah. I'm sure like many companies that are represented here, we've used traditional measures, traditional ways of thinking about tech impact. Time savings, cost savings are probably amongst the most popular, but their concepts or measures that tend to be somewhat abstract for senior leaders, especially when the business value is indirect.
Well,
So
it just becomes the default, and they're like, oh, that's normal now.
So we've started trying something different, and we call it DWEs. DWE stands for Digital Worker Equivalence, and one DWE equals 2,000 hours of human effort, so basically a year's worth of effort for a human. And so as we think about our total workforce, we're now thinking about the combination of human workers and digital workers. And so in the context of business growth, and we're a growth company, driven by our innovation, we are looking at how do we increase our digital workers in order to meet our capacity challenges. Our goal for 2023 is to actually create 1,200 digital workers. And you can do the math, 1,200 times 2,000, that's a lot of impact for the organization. And so DWEs is becoming a stable, a reliable, and I expect will continue to be a relevant metric for our senior leaders.
What's holding you back from scaling the DWEs? Is it about culture? Is it about the technology and being able to implement it fast enough? Is it, talk about that because it's interesting. It's a great goal, right?
Yeah.
What do you think's, because you're like, can we scale those? What do you think the challenge is in doing that?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge has been around OCM and change management across the organization, but actually in the context of augmentation, it's resonating with our leaders, and it's less threatening for our employees. So.
Interesting. Well, as we wrap up, any final thoughts on this? And it's great you talk about augmentation versus automation, but any other final thoughts on what you're doing with AI at Lilly?
Yeah. Well, again, I thank you for the opportunity. I think it's, in summary, it's an exciting time for all of us. I think to be where we are in terms of science and medicine and technology. We have to move beyond automation as our primary emphasis to augmentation, which is focused on business growth. And that's how I believe we as tech and AI professionals are going to make a difference, and that's how we're going to help our companies win.
Yeah, and I think the most exciting thing is this feels like just the start. Like we've been doing technology for a long time, but this is just the start of accepting this. So, I'm really excited to see how it all progresses. And I thank everyone for watching and and listening. Appreciate that. Tim has generously said he'll be around, I think, at the cocktail hour and other things as well. So if you have any questions or comments, you want to talk to him or me, we'll be around. We'll probably head out to the back because I think there's back-to-back sessions right now. But let's give a round of applause to Tim.
Thank you.